Hi, I'm Mandy Wildman, and I use pre-loved clothing and materials to create unique garments and gifts for women who want to love how they dress. So in the last video, I teased you a little bit with a picture of a garment that I said was coming soon. Well, soon is here, and I'm excited to show you this cute flip today. We're going to transform a shapeless drop-waist 90s era dress. It was kind of tired looking, and it was a little too tight in the girth for me to wear, with the waistline being in a kind of a weirdly low place. But I loved it dearly. Now, the reason I love a pinafore dress is that it is so very versatile. You can style it in a million different ways all year long, and typically a pinafore dress, or jumper as it's sometimes called, is comfy. And it's almost always designed to be a layering piece. And of course, that makes me happy. I love layers. Layers. So the first thing I did was to take it apart by seam ripping or unpicking the dress at the waist and at the side seams. I knew I wasn't going to keep it as a dress because it wasn't wide enough for that, but I thought it might make a great overdress to add a layer to another garment or two underneath. Once I had the bodice unpicked at the sides, I tried it on and measured where I wanted the new waist to be, and then I marked it with a pin. Allowing for a 1/2 inch seam, I cut the extra 4 inches of fabric off both the front and the back of the bodice. Keep those scraps, you're going to need them in a minute. Can we just take a moment to admire the work of the human who handmade this garment back in the early 90s? They carefully cut out the applique pieces from a floral sheet, I'm guessing, and stitched them on with a tiny zigzag stitch. This is just so cool. So in case you want to make one of these for yourself, this garment basically consists of 4 rectangles, 2 for the skirt and 2 for the top. In my case, each of the 2 skirt pieces measured 35 inches wide by 25 inches long, and it was already hemmed. Yay! But I had to trim the bodice a little bit at the sides to get rid of the armhole shapes. And I also had to cut 4 inches off the bottom to line up with my waist. So it ended up measuring about 20 inches wide and 17 inches long from the top of the shoulders. It's really just a rectangle with a neck cut out of it. See that? So if you want your garment to be bigger or smaller than this one, just measure your bust and waist and how long you want it and make your own rectangles. Now, I don't know about you, but I really have to have at least one pocket on a skirt for all the bits and bobs I collect around my house. So I looked in my scrap bag and I found a piece that I liked, and I trimmed it down to about 7 inches by 7.5 inches. And then I found a scrap of lace, so I threw that on for good measure. I eyeballed where I wanted the pocket to be, and I sewed it around twice with a zigzag stitch. After that, I gathered the 2 skirt parts to be the same width as the bodice front and back, and I sewed them together. Then I hemmed the edges of the bodice and the skirt, which I left open at the sides. Finally, we're going to grab those scraps that we cut off earlier, and we're going to cut those lengthways, making 4 2-inch wide strips. I folded them in half lengthways, and I sewed along the edges. Then I turned them right sides out with a safety pin, which is always as fiddly as fajitas, and then I stitched them to the edges of the waist for ties. See that? And we're done! How cool is that? I really appreciate you hanging out with me today. I have at least 1 million more restyling and upcycling projects to show you, so I guess you're just going to have to like and subscribe for the next video in the series. Oh, I know it's a chore, but I'll love you forever if you do.